The mysterious case of Rosemary Kennedy has long been shrouded in secrecy. Her life was a complicated one from the very beginning. Born in 1918, during the Spanish influenza outbreak, Rosemary was not born under ideal circumstances. When Rose Kennedy was giving birth to Rosemary, the doctor was not available at the time, and the nurse instructed Rosemary's mother to keep her legs closed, which resulted in Rosemary experiencing harmful loss of oxygen. This was custom in these times, seeing as if the doctor was not present, he would not get paid. Being forced to delay Rosemary's birth had a profound effect on her development. As she grew older, her parents began to notice that she was not like other children her age. Her reading, writing, spelling, and counting skills were reported to be at a 4th grade level, and her parents began to worry about her future. They sent her to Pennsylvania to attend a boarding school for the intellectually disabled when she was 15 years old. Afterward, she went to the Sacred Heart Convent in Rhode Island, where 2 nuns and a special teacher worked with her all day, isolated in a separate classroom. Despite her difficulties, Rosemary had a lively personality and enjoyed social activities, such as tea dances and dress fittings. She was even presented as a debutante to King George VI and Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace in 1938, but when she returned to the United States, things began to change. At the age of 22, Rosemary's behavior became increasingly erratic, and her sister Eunice Kennedy Shriver noticed that she was becoming increasingly irritable and difficult. She experienced convulsions and flew into violent rages in which she would hit and injure others. Her family began to worry that her behavior would become a liability and damage their political careers. Things came to a head when Rosemary was expelled from a summer camp and began sneaking out at night from a convent school in Washington, D.C. The nuns suspected that she might have been involved with sexual partners, and her father was worried that her behavior would shame and embarrass the family. To fully tell this story, we must take a step back. We must explain who Rosemary's father was and who he wanted to be. Rosemary's father was a man of distinguished appearance, exuding an air of authority and sophistication. He possessed a strong and commanding presence that captured attention whenever he entered a room. His name was Joseph Patrick Kennedy, a figure immersed in the turbulent currents of American politics and business. Joseph harbored a fervent desire for one of his sons to ascend to the highest office in the land, a dream that could alter the course of history. But behind this ambition lay a shadowy concern, one that resided within his own family. In 1941, when Rosemary was 23 years old, her father arranged for her to have a lobotomy, a form of psychosurgery that was supposed to help calm her mood swings and prevent her occasional violent outbursts. In the twisted theater of medical experimentation, Rosemary Kennedy's lobotomy became a horrifying spectacle that would forever mar her existence. The sterile walls of the operating room concealed the horrors that awaited her fragile mind. 3 short years ago, she was at Buckingham Palace, happy, smiling and waving with her family. Today, she lay on her back with James Watts above her. As the surgeon's scalpel sliced through her flesh, severing neural connections with reckless abandon, Rosemary's identity was cast into the abyss. They talked to Rosemary throughout the procedure until she stopped responding. That was the sign that enough brain matter had been cut. The delicate balance of her consciousness teetered on the edge of oblivion, while the chorus of medical professionals proclaimed their misguided triumph. But what they couldn't fathom was the tragic aftermath, as Rosemary's essence dissolved, forever lost in the dark labyrinth of her own mind. After the botched surgery, Rosemary was hidden at St. Coletta's, an institution in Jefferson, Wisconsin, where she spent the rest of her life being cared for. Her situation was kept secret from the public and even her own siblings for decades, but the truth eventually came out, and her siblings were devastated to learn what had happened to her. Some feel that Rosemary was subjected to the lobotomy for nefarious reasons. First, it is important to note that Rosemary's intellectual disability was likely the result of her complicated birth and not a hereditary condition, the severity of which is unknown, due to there being no reports of how long she was deprived of oxygen. For example, a child who experiences mild oxygen deprivation during birth may have difficulty with fine motor skills or attention, but may still develop average or above average intelligence. Secondly, her developmental delays were reported to be mild, and while she had difficulty with academic subjects, she was able to learn social skills and attend social events. Rosemary's diary is also pointed to as compelling evidence challenging the perception of her severe disability. Through her expressive writing, she showcases her ability to articulate thoughts and emotions, displaying a level of cognitive ability and linguistic skills that contradict the prevailing narrative. Her personal reflections and introspective thinking demonstrate a depth of self-awareness and consciousness. Additionally, references to social interactions within the diary suggest an engagement with the world and a capacity to navigate social dynamics. These aspects of her diary shed light on a more nuanced understanding of Rosemary's abilities. Moreover, the accounts of Rosemary's behavior leading up to the lobotomy are inconsistent, and there is no clear evidence to suggest that she was engaging in sexual activity or that her behavior was particularly erratic. In fact, it is possible that her outbursts were a result of frustration and a lack of stimulation in the isolated and controlled environment in which she lived. The schools she attended prior to her lobotomy were known for their strict discipline and controlled environments, which was meant to help students focus and improve their behavior. Rosemary was expelled multiple times and went to several different boarding schools in different states. It is important to note that Rosemary was placed in environments meant to reform her, but instead, they only seemed to exacerbate her issues. However, hindsight is always 20/20. Others, such as her father, found the procedure completely necessary at the time. There were some cases where patients who underwent lobotomy appeared to experience some improvement in their mental health, although the long-term outcomes were often poor. One of the most famous success stories of lobotomy is that of Howard Dully, who underwent the procedure at the age of 12 in 1960. Dully had been diagnosed with childhood schizophrenia, which in retrospect is considered to have been a misdiagnosis. He was referred for a lobotomy by his stepmother, who found him difficult to handle. The procedure was performed by Dr. Walter Freeman, who used an ice pick-like instrument to sever connections in Dully's prefrontal cortex. After the procedure, Dully's behavior did appear to improve somewhat, although he still struggled with emotional instability and was frequently hospitalized for mental health issues throughout his entire life. In 2005, he underwent an MRI scan which showed that the lobotomy had caused significant damage to his brain. While some may argue that Dully's case is an example of a successful lobotomy, it is important to note that his experience was far from positive. Joseph F. Kennedy consulted with the very same physician that performed Dully's lobotomy, Walter Freeman. However, Freeman had his second-hand man, James W. Watts, perform the procedure on Rosemary. Afterwards, Joseph Kennedy never publicly apologized for Rosemary's lobotomy, but expressed to his wife in private, "We should have never touched the brain." Rosemary Kennedy was the family's deepest, darkest secret. The Kennedys kept her locked away in an institution in the heart of Wisconsin, far from the prying eyes and the world's judgmental gaze. She was their shame, their burden, their cross to bear. For decades, they kept her hidden from view, shielding her from the public scrutiny and ignoring her cries for help. But the truth always has a way of coming out, and Rosemary's was no exception. Rosemary Kennedy underwent her lobotomy on September 14, 1941, and for several decades afterward, her existence remained concealed from the public. The Kennedys attempted to keep her hidden, only acknowledging her disability in the 1980s, long after the profound impact of her treatment had taken its toll. By then, Rosemary's tragic tale had become one of the most somber and haunting episodes in the history of the Kennedy family. The question remains, did Rosemary really need the lobotomy, or was it just a way for her father to cover up his embarrassment about her behavior? The truth may never be known, but the tragic story of Rosemary Kennedy serves as a warning about the dangers of unchecked medical experimentation and the importance of informed